The moment Gemma Holloway handed the man a $5 bill and told him the nearest Tim Hortons was 2 blocks east, she had no idea she was handing money to the man who signed her paycheck. She didn't know it then. She wouldn't know it for a very long time. And in that gap between what she assumed and what was actually true, an entire story was born. One that would change both of their lives in ways neither of them saw coming. It started on a Tuesday in late October, when the lobby of the Aldercrest Grand felt the way luxury hotels always do in the shoulder season. Too quiet, too polished, and carrying the particular tension of a place that depends on first impressions. The Aldercrest Grand sat at the corner of Burrard and Georgia in downtown Vancouver. 42 floors of glass and steel and thread-count ambition. The kind of hotel that had a name for its own scent and a waiting list for its penthouse suite. Gemma had worked the front desk for 3 years. She was good at it. Precise, observant, with the sort of calm manner that made guests feel seen without feeling intruded upon. She was 28, had a communications degree she'd never quite used, and sent half her salary home to her mother in Kelowna every month. She didn't talk about that part. She was reorganizing the key card drawer when the revolving door pushed open and let in a gust of cold Pacific air and one extremely unremarkable-looking man. He was tall, she clocked that first. Maybe 6'2". Dark hair that needed cutting, the kind of stubble that had moved past deliberate into simply forgotten. He was wearing a canvas jacket that looked like it had been through a hiking season and hadn't fully recovered. Dark jeans with a scuff at the knee, and boots that had done real work somewhere. He carried a single duffel bag, no rolling luggage, no laptop case, no suit bag hanging from his fist like a flag of purpose. Just the duffel, dropped over one shoulder. And the sort of expression men get when they've been traveling long enough that their face has stopped doing anything in particular. Gemma's professional assessment took about 4 seconds. Tourist, maybe a late-season backpacker passing through, probably looking for directions to a hostel. Not a guest. Or if he was a guest, he'd booked something in the lower rooms, the ones near the elevator shaft that the booking sites always photographed from the most flattering angle. She smiled because that was her job. "Good afternoon," she said. "Are you lost? Can I point you somewhere?" The man looked at her. He had gray eyes, not blue-gray, just gray, the color of the North Shore Mountains in November, and the look he gave her wasn't offended or confused. It was something closer to curious, the way a person looks when they're watching to see what someone will do next. "No," he said. "I'm not lost." He walked to the desk. Gemma recalibrated. "Walk in." She kept the smile in place. "Welcome to the Aldercrest Grand. Do you have a reservation?" "I do," she typed. "Last name?" "Ashford." She typed again, and then stopped. And then, very quietly, felt the floor do something strange beneath her feet that floors are not supposed to do. The reservation was there. It was right there. 3 nights. The Aldercrest Suite, which was not called the Penthouse, because the Aldercrest Grand considered the word penthouse insufficiently specific. The Aldercrest Suite occupied the entire 42nd floor. It had its own concierge lift, a private terrace, and a nightly rate that Gemma had only ever seen on the screen in the context of confirming someone else's booking. She looked up. He was watching her, still with that look. "Mr. Ashford," she said carefully. "Could I see a form of ID, please?" He produced a driver's license. British Columbia. The photo matched the face. The name matched the reservation. Nicholas Ashford. She'd heard the name exactly once before, in a meeting she hadn't been supposed to overhear, when the general manager had closed his office door but not quite latched it, and she'd caught fragments. Acquisition. Ashford Holdings. Not confirmed yet. Keep it quiet. She had not connected that name to a man with a worn canvas jacket and a single duffel bag. "Of course, Mr. Ashford," she said. "Let me get your key cards ready." "And would you like me to arrange?" "Just the keys," he said. "Please." She printed the key cards. She handed them over. Their fingers didn't touch because Gemma was professionally precise about these things. He picked up his bag. "Mr. Ashford," she said, and she wasn't sure why she said the next thing, except that the afternoon was quiet, and she had always been the kind of person who filled silence when she probably shouldn't. "The concierge lift is just past the east wing. It's private, probably more comfortable than the main elevators." He paused. Looked back at her. "I know where the lift is," he said. He walked away. Gemma stood at the desk and felt the peculiar, specific heat of a mistake. She couldn't quite identify yet, rising from her collar to her hairline. She was not the type to dwell. She went back to the key card drawer. She saw him the next morning in the lobby cafe. which guests rarely used because the hotel restaurant on the second floor was part of the package and the coffee was better there. But there he was, sitting at the small corner table with a cup of drip coffee and his phone face down on the table, which nobody did anymore unless they were either very old or very deliberate. And this man was neither. She was on break. She had her own coffee, a travel mug from home, the one with the chipped lid she kept meaning to replace. And she was trying to get through 15 minutes of sitting down, which the morning shift rarely allowed. She sat 2 tables over, not because she wanted to be near him. It was the only table with a chair that didn't wobble. He looked up, recognized her, said nothing. Gemma nodded the way you nod at someone whose name you technically know but have no social claim to use. 3 minutes passed. You told me the nearest Tim Hortons was 2 blocks east, he said. She looked up from her mug. Yesterday, he said. When I came in, you asked if I was lost. She opened her mouth, closed it. I didn't, she started. I apologize. I didn't mean to imply. It's 2 blocks west, he said, for the record. He said it without heat. That was almost worse. You're right, she said. I'm sorry. I misjudged. People do, he said, and picked up his phone, and that appeared to be the end of it. Except that it wasn't, because Gemma Holloway had a particular relationship with her own mistakes. She examined them the way other people examined receipts, looking for where the numbers didn't add up. She had misjudged him, not just the directions, all of it. The canvas jacket, the duffel bag, the unremarkable entrance. She had looked at him and drawn a conclusion, and the conclusion had been wrong, and she had acted on it. And now she had to sit 2 tables away from the man and drink her coffee and decide whether to say something or nothing. She said something. The jacket threw me, she said. He looked at her again. It's a good jacket, she added. I mean, it looks like it's been places. I saw the bag and I thought, it doesn't matter what I thought. I made an assumption and it was wrong and I'm sorry. Nicholas Ashford, and she was thinking of him by his full name, which was not how she normally thought about guests, but this felt like a full name situation. Studied her for a moment. The jacket's from Patagonia, he said. I bought it 8 years ago in Whitehorse. I was doing a feasibility assessment for a logistics hub up near the Alaska border. In that jacket. There was a pause that Gemma couldn't quite classify. Gemma, she said, since I apparently already know your name. I know, he said. It's on your name tag. She looked down. It was. He went back to his phone. But when she got up to go back to the desk, she was almost certain. She caught the edge of something on his face that might, in the right light, have been the beginning of a smile. She didn't plan the second conversation. She didn't plan any of them, which was maybe the point. He came to the desk that afternoon with a question about restaurants, specifically, whether the concierge could arrange a table at a place that had been booked for 2 months, which concierges at hotels like this could generally manage if the situation called for it. I'll pass that along, she said. Marcus at the concierge desk has a contact at most of the... I'm asking you, he said. She blinked. That's not really my area. The concierge... You told me you'd been at this hotel for 3 years, he said. This morning, I didn't tell you that. You told the woman who came in after you on break. I wasn't trying to listen. I was sitting 2 tables away. Gemma stared at him. That's an unusual amount of attention to pay to someone else's conversation. I'm a details person, he said, simply. As if this explained everything about him, which she was beginning to think it might. She found him the restaurant table. She called in a favor with the reservations manager she'd spent 6 months building a professional relationship with, and she got him a table for 1 at 7:30 at a place that had been written up in the Globe and Mail and booked accordingly. He thanked her. Formally, the way people thank you when they're not used to needing favors. You didn't have to do that, he said. No, she agreed, I didn't. She went back to work. That evening, walking home along Davie Street in the November drizzle that Vancouver delivers with the specificity of a personal message, Gemma thought about the way he'd said, I'm a details person. Flat, unperformed, like a fact he'd stated so many times it had lost the quality of self-description and become simply true. She thought about the jacket from Whitehorse. She thought about the phone face down on the table. She thought about her mother, who always said that the people most worth knowing were the ones who carried their real lives in the quiet parts of themselves, not the loud ones. She made herself stop thinking about Nicholas Ashford. She was mostly successful. The thing about the Aldercrest Grand was that 42 floors created a kind of vertigo of proximity. You could work a hotel for 3 years and never properly meet a guest. Or you could spend 3 days passing the same person in lobbies and lifts and the narrow corridor between the cafe and the East Wing, and by the end of it feel like you knew the shape of them, even if you didn't know them at all. By Thursday morning, she knew that he took his coffee without milk and didn't touch the sugar packets that the cafe arranged in a small fan beside every cup. She knew he was on his phone before 7 a.m., but by 9 he'd usually put it away. She knew he walked the seawall. She'd seen him come back in around 8:30, with damp shoulders and a slightly less closed expression than he usually wore. The particular loosening that cold air and physical movement does to people who live too much inside their heads. She knew, from a conversation she genuinely hadn't tried to overhear, that he'd canceled something in Toronto to be in Vancouver this week, and that the cancellation had been the right call but hadn't felt like one. She didn't know what any of it meant, exactly. She knew it meant something. On Thursday afternoon, she was covering the desk alone. Her colleague Petra had gone to sort out a billing dispute on the 4th floor. When Nicholas Ashford came through the lobby with his jacket and his duffel, and the specific energy of a man who is leaving somewhere. "Checking out?" she said. "Extending," he said. "2 more nights, if there's availability in the suite." She checked. There was. She processed the extension with the efficient ease of someone who had done this 10,000 times, because she had, and handed him a printed confirmation. He didn't take it immediately. "You grew up in Kelowna," he said. She looked up sharply. "You mentioned it this morning," he said. "To your colleague. On the phone you hear a lot of things," she said. "Only the interesting ones." The lobby was empty. The afternoon light came through the glass facade at a low November angle, turning everything slightly gold and slightly dishonest, the way late autumn light always does, making ordinary things look like the last of something. "I grew up in Kelowna," she confirmed. "Came to Vancouver for school. Stayed." She paused. "I send money home. My mother's on a fixed income. My dad died when I was 17. She wasn't sure why she said that last part. It came out the way true things sometimes do without an invitation. "She's fine. She's good. I just like knowing she's okay." Nicholas Ashford was quiet for a moment. Not the silence of discomfort, but the silence of someone actually absorbing what they've heard. "My father built the first Ashford property in 1987, he said. A 40-room motel outside Kamloops. He cleaned the rooms himself every morning before the housekeeping staff arrived, because he didn't think anyone else did it right." He paused. "He died in 2019. I still think about the way he used to check under the beds." It was the most personal thing he'd said since he arrived. Gemma recognized it for what it was. A reciprocation offered carefully. The way you place something fragile on a table in front of someone you've decided, provisionally, to trust. "He sounds like someone worth knowing," she said. "He was," said Nicholas. He took the confirmation slip. The next morning he was in the lobby cafe again, at the corner table, phone face down. And when Gemma came for her break, he didn't look surprised to see her, which felt like its own kind of answer to a question she hadn't quite asked. She sat at the table with the wobbly chair this time by accident, and she spent 30 seconds trying to stabilize it before giving up. "Sit here," he said. Not an invitation exactly. More like a solution. She moved to his table. He moved his coffee half an inch to the left to give her room, and they sat together in the particular silence of two people who have been circling each other for days and have finally, without quite deciding to, stopped circling. "You know who I am," he said. Not a question. "I know you own this hotel," she said. "And I know I told you the Tim Hortons was 2 blocks east when it's 2 blocks west. And I implied you were a backpacker who needed directions. And I'm aware that you are probably someone who gets a great deal of very carefully managed professional courtesy. So I want to say, my behavior toward you that first day was the same as it would be for anyone who came in looking like you looked." He raised an eyebrow. "I mean that generously," she said. "I know," he said. "That's why I extended my stay." She looked at him. "I travel to my properties twice a year," he said. "Incognito, more or less. I want to see how guests are actually treated, not how staff perform when they know I'm watching." He turned his cup on the saucer, one slow rotation. "Most people, when they realize who I am, start managing me. You didn't. I didn't realize until you were already checked in," she said. "I know. And then when you did realize, you apologized for the directions and asked nothing else." He paused. "Do you know how rare that is?" She thought about it. "I didn't want anything from you," she said honestly. "I wasn't angling for a good word to management or a promotion I was just apologizing for sending you the wrong way to get coffee." He looked at her with the gray eyes in the November light and said, "Exactly." She learned things over the next 2 days in the slow, non-linear way you learn things about a person when you're not trying to. In fragments, over coffee, in passing conversations that extended past their natural endpoints, because neither of them chose to close them. She learned that he had not been back to Kamloops since his father's funeral, that he'd expanded Ashford Holdings from 8 properties to 31 over 14 years, and had, somewhere in the middle of all that, stopped being able to sleep properly. A fact he mentioned with the tone of someone reporting a minor structural issue in a building, something to be noted and addressed, not grieved. She learned that he ate the same breakfast every morning: eggs, toast, black coffee. Not because he was rigid, but because he'd found that making small decisions before 8 a.m. used up resources he preferred to save. She told him about studying communications and discovering too late that what she'd actually been studying was how to talk to people, which turned out to be useful at a front desk and not much else, but also maybe everywhere. She told him about the summer she'd spent waitressing at a resort in Tofino, and how the Pacific in August had made her understand for the first time that some things were simply too large for human plans to matter against, and how she'd found that comforting rather than frightening. "Most people find that frightening," he said. "I know," she said. "I think I'm built slightly differently." "I think you might be," he said. She wasn't sure if it was a compliment. She was fairly sure it was true. On his last evening, his actual last evening, the extension over checkout confirmed for 7 a.m. He came to the desk at 9 o'clock when the lobby was empty and the night manager hadn't come on yet, and it was just Gemma finishing her notes, her travel mug empty, her feet tired in the way that hotel lobby floors tire feet, which is specific and relentless. "I wanted to ask you something," he said. She put down her pen. "Okay, Ashford Holdings is opening a new property in Victoria in March. We're hiring a guest experience director, someone to set the tone for how guests are received, to train the front of house staff, to be the part of the hotel that guests remember even when they can't remember why." He paused. "I'd like you to apply." Gemma looked at him. "You'd like me to apply? I'd like to offer it to you directly, but HR has a process, and I've learned, at some cost, to respect that." The corner of his mouth did the thing she'd first noticed in the lobby cafe, the almost smile. "So I'm telling you the position exists and suggesting you apply. What happens after that is up to the process. And if I apply and they choose someone else, they won't. You sound very certain." "I'm a details person," he said. She laughed. Actually laughed, not the professional approximation she'd been using all week, but the real one, the one that came up faster than she expected and sounded, to her own ears, like something she hadn't used in a while. He looked at her when she laughed. Not surprised, just attentive. The way he looked at everything, she'd come to understand. But this time with something else underneath it, something she recognized because she felt it too. In the vicinity of her chest, in the inconvenient and unhelpful region, where practical people keep their feelings when they don't have time to examine them. "I'll think about it," she said. "That's fair," he said. He was quiet for a moment. The lobby breathed around them, that particular late-evening hotel quiet that's never entirely silent, always underlaid with the hum of a building doing its nighttime work. "Gemma," he said. She waited. "The restaurant Monday night," he said. "The one you arranged. I ate alone at a very good table and the food was excellent and the service was perfect." A pause. "It would have been better with company." She held his gaze. "I'm usually available on Mondays." "I know your schedule," he said. "I'm a details person." That's beginning to sound less like a personality trait and more like a warning. "Maybe," he said. "Or an invitation, depending on how you read it." She looked at him, at the gray eyes, the jacket that had been to Whitehorse and back, the man who cleaned hotel rooms in his memory every morning, because his father had, and some things become part of you before you understand why. And she thought, this is what it feels like to be surprised by someone. Not by their money or their title or the number on the nightly rate, by the actual, specific, unrepeatable person they turned out to be when you got close enough to see. "I'll read it as an invitation," she said. He nodded, once, certain. "Safe travels, Mr. Ashford," she said. "Nicholas," he said. "Nicholas," she said. He walked to the concierge lift. He knew where it was. He had always known where it was. And the doors opened and he stepped inside. And in the last moment before the doors closed, he looked back at her across the lobby the way people look at things they intend to return to. The doors closed. Gemma stood at the desk of the Aldercrest Grand in the quiet of a Thursday night, with her empty travel mug and her tired feet and the application page for Ashford Holdings already pulled up on her personal phone, and outside the Vancouver rain fell on Burrard Street with the patient consistency of something that has all the time in the world and knows it. And she thought that sometimes the stories that change your life are the ones that start with a misdirected apology and a wrong turn to a Tim Hortons, and that her mother, who had always known things like this, would have had something very specific and entirely right to say about it, and that she would call her tomorrow morning and tell her everything.